Before history had a name, there was Uruk, a city of towers and terror ruled by a king 2/3 god and 1/3 man. Gilgamesh, strong beyond mortal measure, beautiful beyond mortal right, and merciless beyond mortal patience. He took what he wished, the harvest, the daughters, the son sent to war for his glory. The people did not rebel. They wept. And their weeping rose, like smoke from a funeral pyre, into the vault of heaven itself. The gods heard. Uruk, mother of creation, tore a fistful of clay from the wild earth and shaped it into vengeance. Not a man to serve Uruk, but a man to answer it. Enkidu, born not of woman but of wilderness, he ran with gazelles, drank at their springs, and knew nothing of cities, of kings, or of shame. He was the balance the heavens demanded, a storm-given flesh waiting in the grass. But Uruk feared him, this creature who tore apart traps and freed the beasts from hunters' snares. So they sent a woman, not with sword, but with presence, speech, and the rites of the temple. Shamhat walked into the wild and waited by the water. When Enkidu rose from her company, the gazelles he once ran with fled from him in terror. Civilization had touched him, and the wild would never call him brother again. She taught him bread. She taught him beer. She taught him the weight of cloth upon skin that had known only wind. And she told him of a king who ruled Uruk like a wound that would not close. Something in Enkidu, some ember lit by the gods themselves, burned toward that city. He walked toward Uruk not as a beast, but as a man with purpose. A reckoning wearing sandals. They met in the gateway, where Gilgamesh sought to claim another man's wedding night as tribute. Enkidu blocked the door with his own body. What followed shook the foundations of the city. Fist against fist, god blood against wild blood, they broke through walls and toppled pillars meant to outlast empires. And then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. Not in death, but in respect. Two men, finally, who had met their equal. From that violence, an unbreakable brotherhood was born. Together they grew restless, for glory sleeps uneasily in the hearts of kings. Gilgamesh spoke of the cedar forest, a realm forbidden to mortals, guarded by Humbaba, a terror set there by the gods themselves. His roar was flood, his breath was fire, and his eyes carried death. Enkidu had known that forest once, in his wild years, and he trembled at its memory. But Gilgamesh craved a name that would outlive stone. So they armed themselves, and marched toward the mountain of the gods. 7 days they journeyed, and on the 8th, the forest itself seemed to breathe against them. Then Humbaba rose, a horror wrapped in 7 auras of dread, his voice the collapse of mountains. The two men fought him as one creature, blade and axe, fear and fury. When the guardian fell to his knees, begging for mercy, Gilgamesh refused. They severed his head. The cedars wept sap like blood, and the gods took notice of what men had dared to do. Word of their triumph reached Ishtar, goddess of love and war, and she desired Gilgamesh for her own. He refused her coldly, recounting the fates of lovers she had ruined before him. Humiliated, she demanded vengeance from heaven, and the bull of heaven was unleashed upon Uruk. It cracked the earth with its hooves, drank rivers dry, and slaughtered hundreds. But Enkidu seized its horns, and Gilgamesh drove home the blade. The bull fell. In that triumph, their doom was sealed. The gods do not forgive insult easily. Humbaba slain. The bull of heaven butchered. Ishtar dishonored before the walls of Uruk. Someone would answer. The divine council decreed it. Enkidu, made of clay and wilderness, would pay the debt. A fever seized him in the night, and no medicine, no prayer, could loosen its grip. Gilgamesh watched the strongest man he had ever known grow weak as a dying ember, and understood, for the first time, that even the favored of heaven could be unmade. 12 days the fever raged, and on the 12th, it took him. Enkidu, brother, mirror, the wild-made kin, lay still as the clay from which he was formed. Gilgamesh did not weep as kings weep. He howled. He tore the fine robes from his body and dressed himself in the skins of lions, as if grief itself demanded he become something less than civilized. For 6 days and 7 nights he sat beside the corpse, refusing burial, refusing truth, until decay itself forced his hand. Something broke in Gilgamesh that could not be mended by conquest or crown. If Enkidu could die, Enkidu, forged half by divinity, then he too was mortal beneath his glory. Terror seized him more thoroughly than any beast of the cedar forest. He abandoned his throne, his city, his name, and walked into the wilderness like a man fleeing his own shadow. He sought only one thing now, the secret of eternal life, and the one man rumored to possess it. He crossed mountains that swallowed the sun, waters that no mortal vessel could cross, and came at last to Utnapishtim, the one man the gods had made immortal. The old man told him of a flood that once erased the world entire, how the gods, regretting their fury, had spared him alone within a vessel built to outlast the wrath of heaven. Utnapishtim's immortality was not won. It was granted once, for a purpose that would never be granted again. Gilgamesh's face fell like a man realizing his quest had already failed. Utnapishtim offered him one final trial, not of strength, but of will. Stay awake, he said, for 6 days and 7 nights, and perhaps mortality itself might bend for you. Gilgamesh, who had slain demons and God's own beasts, could not conquer his own exhausted body. Sleep took him like a thief in the dark. He woke to find loaves of bread laid beside him, each marking time he swore he had not lost. The lesson was cruel, and it was final. Yet Utnapishtim's wife took pity, and revealed one final secret, a plant at the bottom of the sea that renewed youth itself. Gilgamesh weighted his feet with stones, plunged into darkness, and tore it from the depths with his own hands. Victory, at last. But as he rested by a pool on his journey home, a serpent rose from the water and stole the plant from his side, shedding its skin as it vanished. Youth eternal was granted to a creature that would never know it mattered. Gilgamesh wept, not for the plant, but for the truth it confirmed. He returned to Uruk empty-handed, and looked upon its walls, the only immortality a man could truly build. Stone. Memory. A name carved into history by his own hand. This is the oldest story humanity dared to tell itself, that glory fades, that flesh fails, but that what we build, what we tell, and what we leave behind in stone and story endures long after the king himself is dust. For more information, visit clovisstar.com.